out there, watchers and lurkers. Tonight, out of the total ordinary, we're going into the dark world of Malifaux for a battle report with this guy here. This is Keith.
Hello.
Keith is a bit of a Ten Thunders expert.
Well, I don't know about expert, but I do like him.
You've been deep. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think what we'll start with is we're going to play a 50 Soulstone match. We have selected schemes and strats already. We'll tell you about those in a moment. But I think we'll let Keith do a little bit of talking first, and you can tell us who's coming out to play.
Sure. So tonight I will be playing with Jacob Lynch. So I'm going to play with some Ten Thunders Jacob Lynch. With him, I've got Hungering Darkness. I've got 2 Illuminated, 2 Ten Thunder Brothers, a Beckoner, and his good buddy Mr. Graves. Because Kieran's guy has been stirring up some trouble around the Honeypot Lounge, and Lynch needs to get paid.
Tell us why.
Well, who are you taking?
Well, I will be Mr. Yan Lo. He is the old ancestor dragging things up from the grave. So he's in the play. He's going to be armed with his Brutal Kakara upgrade as well as the Reliquary. Along with him comes niece Chiaki, and she has her Pull of the Graves upgrade attached to her. And good old Uncle Toshiro, the daimyo, with his Command the Graves upgrade. We have a little infiltrator, a little bit of outside the normal for Yan Lo and his ancestor loving friends, but a son of an ancestor, the Lone Swordsman, is out here to play, who's been doing some undercover work for us in the Honeypot, where Jacob Lynch is. As far as other tag-alongs, we have the handy Soul Porter. We will also be flying out with an Unrio and 2 Ashigaru to make 8 models in the crew. That's total. Now, maybe I'll butt in here and I'll say the beef is that although Jacob Lynch does a fine job at the Honeypot running the front for a lot of the Ten Thunders action with that casino, he is a dabbler in the arcane arts and the spirit world. And that sometimes runs a little bit against and rubs elbows with what Yan Lo likes to do best. So Lynch over here, because of his dabbling, has been interfering with Yan Lo's connection with the ancestors of the past. And, maybe just a lesson needs to be taught to Mr. Lynch about not to overstep his age.
Well, from my point of view, it seems that some old geezer has been knocking around the Honeypot Lounge, spending script like there's no tomorrow. And when it came time to collect, our old friend Mr. Graves went up to the old man, and then with a crack of lightning, he was just gone. So it's time to go in and make that old guy pay up.
Well,
So it is a 10 Thunders off.
Sometimes the night of entertainment isn't worth the dollars.
You always get what you pay for at the Honeypot Lounge.
Okay, we're going to pause here for a second, then we'll talk about streams and strats and our layout. Back in a second.
Alrighty, so for our strategy tonight, we are going to be playing Guard the Stash on a corner deployment type situation. So we'll figure out how we're going to split that. We've got Exhaust Their Forces and Leave Your Mark in the pool, as well as Inspection, Frame for Murder, and as always, Convict Labor. So it's an interesting pool, particularly with the corner deployment, because you got that nice long diagonal. Things like Leave Your Mark and Convict Labor, I think, are a little bit easier. Looking at each of our crews, you've got 8 models to start with.
That's right.
And I've got 8 models, but you've got a summoner involved as well. So if you start getting that activation, Uncle Toshiro can start bringing in stuff to start exhausting my forces. Of course, mine is more kill focused. Unfortunately, there's not too many killy schemes in there. But if I can just kill your guys off fast enough, maybe you won't get that activation control.
Well, and those 2 are the ones that are interesting to me because you have a Frame for Murder in there.
That's right.
Right? And you want to exhaust the forces, so...
There's going to be some bluffing involved,
Yeah, there certainly will.
First 2 turns might be a bit cagey.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, that's certainly good. Okay, so we're going to break right here, and then we'll get into the narrative of the game, and then we're going to come back afterwards and wrap up with our thoughts about how things went and what great things that we've achieved for the Ten Thunders. Or not the Ten Thunders. Or the Ten Thunders.
And no matter what, 10 Thunders are going to win.
All right, here we go.
All right.
Alrighty, so this is what the board layout looks like. We decided that this should really be fought not around the casino or any place in the the worlds, because maybe the leaders of the 10 Thunders would take opposition to these two having a go at it. So they took it out of town a little bit to this little swampy area. So the way that we treated all this kind of stuff, I guess to talk about scenery, is all these platforms in business, we just treated as height 1 if you were standing up on them. There was ramps to get up. Obviously a higher height of places like this over here where you could stand and get a good vantage point. We treated both the forest areas, of course, as difficult ground, severe terrain, and then over here, this little swamp piece, of course, would be hazardous as well. All of these fences being height 1, there was doors and windows that you could go in and out of the building, so we treated that as such as well. Now, it was corner deployment for this, so we had to split it diagonal down the middle. The reason I have these black lines on here is just to show that the mat itself is 4 foot, but we're actually really playing on a 3 foot square within that. And then when we look to deployment, let's start with Lynch and his crew. So they deployed over here on that one set of platforms behind the fences, and really just kind of fanned out with Lynch in the center, the two 10 Thunder brothers on the edges, and the other team, he has 2 illuminated. You can see there a Beckner and Mr. Graves, and the Hungering Darkness standing on top of the platform. This is a back end look of it, so you can see that, and you can see that 10 Thunder over there on the very backboard edge, all on his own, otherwise everybody hanging out together. On the opposite side, over here at my end, I packed in a little bit tighter, reliably, because Toshiro needs to have the minions packed around him to get full advantage of his war fan abilities and daimyo status. We'll give you an overtop look as well. The only thing I guess that I'm gunning for here is I could see at his deployment that he was going to send a 10 Thunder over to the corners, and I think he tipped off that right away, that he's going to gun for that inspection to get to the corners, and I thought that the swordsman would be the guy to try to oppose that. So that's the only thing that I did outside of the odd. Now, I just showed you this for funsies. This is my opening hand, and it's like a perfect straight from 1 through 6. I don't care too much about the opening hand on the first turn because it's a lot of moving and maneuvering anyway. So, whatever. I keep it and move on. Now, of course, in the first turn, there's nothing much more to it than just a lot of moving. You can see that he did exactly as I thought, and he hustled this guy down the flank there. You can see the other one ended up just on the edge of that building. He's gunning for the corner, so exactly as I suspected. For me, I countered with moving my swordsman with an Onryo up this edge. But again, everything else packed in to the center right here and just moved forward to the middle. The bad guys were using a little bit of cover from that cottage, as we can see them coming up into this area, in this space. And the only thing that really went on here is that this Beckoner tried a little bit of luring that failed. And the only other real action that happened in the first turn here is Yan Lo tried a little bit of Spirit Barrage at the Hungering Darkness, but that failed. Oh, I guess also I should point out too here that we put in the Guard the Stash pieces where they should be, so that's what these 2 markers are. So that's for our strategy. I didn't have them on the initial overhead deployment, but they're there now. So this is a big overhead view of the end of turn 1, where everybody is, deployed and disposed. So it looks very simple like that. Not a lot of interaction going on as you expect out of turn 1. So of course at the end of turn 1, again this is another look at it, the score is 0-0. No surprises there. Okay, let's go to turn 2. So I opened up with Toshiro putting some focus onto the minions that were nearby, and then this one jumped over to one of the Guard the Stash points, and one of these tokens represent that I am braced. The brace ability on these Ashigaru means that if anybody charges to within 3 inches of this guy, then they would take 4 damage by doing it, so it's quite a deterrent. The counter that he had against me here, and what this other token represents, this little yellow one, is the Hungering Darkness doing some attacks on here and giving that guy brilliance, which comes to play in just a moment here. Now, so immediately right after that, the Hungering Darkness has this guy. He takes control of the Ashigaru to do an action. I'm trying to recall the name of the action. Heed My Voice, I think is what it's called. So he does that to use one of the Ashigaru's one actions to charge Yanlo, and beats him backwards and does like 3 damage to him, and also gives him a push, which shoves him into the severe terrain, in which he suffers 4 damage. Like nuts. So at this point, suddenly, things turn against me, and Yanlo has suffered 7 damage right here. He follows it up again by charging in one more time with the Hungering Darkness next action, and it's looking really ugly. A bit of counterattack is that the Onryo moves forward and does a little shooting attack to niggle a couple of points off damage of Huggy as he kind of steps up and blasts it that way. So that's a minor little bit coming back at me. In other places, Chiaki tries to heal Yanlo's poor self as I drag him out of the mucky drink. But to finish up the turn, what happens with poor old Yanlo is he has now suffered 8 out of his 12 wounds. I haven't been able to heal him. He comes out of the drink to this way, and again does a little bit of Spirit Barrage to damage Huggy, who's hiding behind the building. But after a little bit of other messing around, Lynch pulls out all of his crazy hand tricks, and with his final debt ability and the chance to do damage by throwing away aces at the end of the turn, Yanlo goes down. So at the end of turn 2, Yanlo is no more. He is erased from existence. Sad times. Now elsewhere, the Thunder Brothers continue to do what they were aiming to do. So he's jumping over to the corner to score that inspection point, and the other guy at the opposite end was doing the very same thing. The look here again is the overall right towards the end of the turn. So you can see that he's lining those guys all up behind that fence otherwise, and just trying to make the moves towards the center. He brings up this illuminated guy to claim this guard the stash point, and he's got a beckoner over here doing the very same thing. I am opposing with my own lone swordsman, who's come up and taken position on that spot. But I don't have a guy at the other one, because poor old Yanlo went down when he was supposed to hold that. So Keith scores for the strategy of guarding the stash, and he also gets the point for having those 10 Thunders getting the inspection. So at the end of turn 2, we are at 0 to 2 points on this one. Moving on to turn 3, there's a bunch of things that happen early in this turn, and that is that this Illuminated leaps across the fence and kills one of my Ashigaru that had just murdered, or not quite murdered, but really brought down Yanlo. But then Toshiro does what he's there for right afterwards, and he summons up on the 2 corpse markers both of these Ashigaru that you're seeing here right now. So I kind of missed a frame here, I guess, in this, I suppose. Okay. Now, over here in the corner, this other 10 Thunder brother that I hadn't showed you in a little bit starts to reveal another thing. I was willing to let him go and get those points for the inspection. I thought that would be fine. But what he started to surprise me by doing here was dropping down scheme markers, which tipped off that he was going to do convict labor. So now I realize, geez, there's more to it, and I'm backpedaling. I'm really losing here. So I go for a little bit of a gambit. I'm rushing this Ashigaru in that was hiding behind here He's coming over to get at Lynch. I take a bit of a stab, but he stoned away the damage that I was about to do. Back in the other position, Chiaki had done a little bit of healing to get the conditions off of those two recently summoned guys. But then Hungering Darkness leaps over the fence and he butchers this other Ashigaru and kills him down, while the other two are locked in. I also niggle a little bit of damage off this Illuminated with Chiaki's thing, so she did something, and that seemed okay. Now over here, I realized that I need to start contesting it, because you can see that Thunder Brother also dropped a scheme marker, so he's really going for the Convict Labor. The Onryo screams at him with her Vengeful Shriek. It actually did a solid amount of 4 damage on him, which freaked out Keith a little bit, but he responded immediately by getting his Beckoner, who was over there near that Guard the Stash marker, to throw an attack here, which red jokered this poor lady to death. My poor spirit went down in 1. So, more bad news. The one thing that I had positive for me going on in this turn, I suppose, was the Lone Swordsman jumped aside and did a little bit of stabby stab on Graves, knocking 4 wounds off of him as well. So that, I suppose, is positive. Over here, I used the Soul Porter to slip Toshiro in there. I was going to have him sort of huddle around the marker there and get ready to offer up some help to these Ashigaru for the next turn. But Lynch had yet to go, and Lynch once again surprised me with all kinds of hand manipulation. The thing to learn about him is he is not pinned down by the fact that he's engaged in combat. He can do his casting actions outside of there. He can throw away cards to deal damage. So he absolutely ruined Toshiro in 1, which is amazing, because Toshiro, if he takes regular damage, like through melee attacks and stuff like that need flips, people are at -2 flips to do any damage to him. He's super hard to wound. But Lynch doesn't do that. He just selects stuff and does damage. So that was a big blowout against Toshiro, and the end of the turn looks like this, I'm afraid. The only thing that I'm holding on to is I have the Lone Swordsman and an Ashigaru close enough to score the strategy. But furthermore, Keith scores the strategy, but he gets a point now for the first time for Convict Labor as well. So the end of this turn, we are looking at a score of 1-4 at the end of 3 turns. So opening up turn 4, Hungering Darkness leaps across here and manages to get some triggers off of his rams to do super extra damage and kills Chiaki down. He had to pass manipulative tests on a couple of occasions to do it, but he managed it successfully, pounded through a whole bunch of damage, so that poor lady went down quickly. The only upside to that is the lonely, or the small little tiny unassuming Soul Porter who was standing right next to it, got swift, glorious vengeance by stabbing an already wounded Hungering Darkness and pulling my red joker to get that guy slain and buried. However, he's not gone for long, as we'll see very shortly here. Now, Graves and the Lone Swordsman get into a bit of shoving match, and Keith's goal here was just to shove me as far away from that scheme marker as he could. So he used both of his moves to just shove all the way back here and follow up. But then my Lone Swordsman decided that he had enough of that, showed this guy his father's sword. I pitched a couple cards to reactivate, so I made sure that I could kill this guy and then move on. So he actually had a reactivate later where he could move back to the center. In other places, however, Lynch proved once again to be the murderer of all murderers. This Illuminated right over here leapt over the fence and killed the Ashigaru that was there, that it was only on a couple wounds anyway. Now, that was kind of good for me, because that was the one that I had tagged as a frame for murder subject. So I do score for that, but I was playing for Lynch to kill him on the last turn, but he pulled out his other deceptive things and killed other things instead. But the Illuminated killed him off, and then Lynch advanced here and he was able to slay this last Ashigaru that was kind of encroaching upon the token. And then he also slayed poor little Soul Porter over here. And that meant that because the Soul Porter was tagged as illuminated, he was able to regrow the Hungering Darkness and replace him. I scored 1 extra point, therefore, for the sake of having that guy framed for murder. But Keith scored on all 3 things. So he had the strategy, he had the schemes, he moved his 10 Thunder brothers back into the corners to score for inspection again. So at the end of turn 4, this is what we're looking at, a 2-7 score. So, sadly, when turn 5 opens, I am left with this single model on the field. I didn't get initiative, nor did I care at this point. My spirit was sapped away from me. And Keith showed me his hand as well before we even started. And he had 2 12s, 2 13s, and 2 aces in his hand. So he opened up with his attack with Hungering Darkness, killed this guy off, and I really didn't offer much opposition. So laid this guy down, and that was the end of it. So because I was out of it, and Keith had free reign to score the rest of his points, he scored all 3 once again, putting him at a total of 10, and that is where this sad outing by Yanlo and his friends ended. Okay, so here we are back after the carnage that ensued. Poor Yanlo.
He's just an old man.
He was just out there wandering around, and somehow Dirty Lynch found a way to turn it against him. So let's have a reenactment, shall we? So Yanlo's just sitting around.
Go kill that guy.
And he stabs him many times, and then throws him into the ugly, goopy soup.
Yep.
And then there was much sadness, and that happened early.
Turn 2,
like early,
right up
early
turn 2.
Bad news.
Yeah, no, he was gone pretty quickly.
Yeah. So after that happened, all I had to rely on was the lone swordsman,
This little guy
who crept up. And, he had a little bit of a grappling fight with Graves, which was entertaining for a bit. That was a good entertaining
Yeah, it was good. I was trying to push him away, deny you some strategy points, but you managed to just walk on back
and
in
then I
there.
showed him my father's sword.
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
And he does not see another sunrise, sadly.
Yeah, the only other heroic moment that I think I had was the Soul Porter getting swift, glorious vengeance.
That was pretty
Huggy.
good. That one little guy just poking him with a red joker for 4 wounds, taking him out.
Yeah,
not bad.
So, because I didn't say it earlier, a final score was a good old blowout by Keith and Lynch. It was 10 points full value for him, and a lowly 2 for this guy. Partly because I just didn't execute one of my schemes at all.
Shall we talk about schemes? Say what we had.
Yeah.
So I took convict labor and I took inspection, and I figured, as you've seen. Because I figured I saw Kieran's list. It didn't have any range stuff with the 10 Thunder Brothers 0 action to jump around, placing 3 inches, getting those markers down, keeping them there, and staying within 4 inches of board was pretty easy. You didn't try and contest that at all, really.
No, I didn't. Like my crew kind of has to stick together. To
there's a little bubble with
to give it support.
And
Toshiro needs to have guys hang around him.
That's right.
And then most guys move 4 inches anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
All my minions just move 4.
So trying to get to those corners was not really going to happen.
Yeah. I made one pitch at it with the Onryo.
I was afraid of that, and so I pitched the Red Joker to get rid of her.
Yeah,
I was like, okay.
She was going to scream that guy down.
Yeah.
And try to settle over there in that corner, but that was a gambit that did not play out.
The brother combo with Lynch and picking up those aces is very powerful. Yeah, it just lets you do what you want to do with those guys. Takes chance out of the equation.
It is. Yeah. So what's going to still remain a mystery to those of you that are watching is I had the frame for murder, so you saw Timmy go down. Not to Lynch. I was hoping that Lynch would have murdered him. That's kind of what I was setting up there. But Lynch decided to do his other tricks from there. So I probably tipped Keith off in some way to not fall for that bait.
No, not really. He couldn't finish him off, and then I just needed to free up Huggy, so that's why the Illuminated went in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I figured it was on someone. I just didn't know who.
Yeah. And then the second one, What's the title?
It was Exhaust Your Forces.
Exhausting the Forces.
You totally forgot about that.
Not a single time. I tried to do it with a Soul Porter, but that would have been cheating, so I didn't.
So not a one.
So not a single time did I even stick that in there. And I probably could have. Like, there were some opportunities where I was just flailing and nothing.
Yeah. The other thing is you forgot about your stones as well. Like, Yanlo was taking a bit of punishment, and he didn't stone for prevention.
Yep.
Well, he kind of got nickeled and dimed a little bit, but...
Yep. Yeah. Worked over by turned against.
By his own Ashigaru.
So I guess back to the storyline of things, I guess Yanlo got proven something that maybe Lynch has become the master. And Yanlo
right.
is no longer in touch.
You stay out of the
with
spirit
old
world.
self. Yeah.
Stay out of the honeypot lounge.
Yeah, he won't be welcome back there.
Nope.
Even if you get a new bouncer.
Yeah, exactly. Have to start recruiting.
Okay, well, it was a great time tonight.
Yeah, it's a good game.
Glad we fought it out.
That's right.
And so thus comes to the close.
All right.
Curtains.
Thanks, guys.